Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap, and this viewing party was for All Stars 9 episode 9, and the guests this week were Plasma and Kennedy Davenport. Today we're going to be talking about Kennedy calling out production for being shady on her seasons, Plasma spills some behind the scenes tea about how the Rusicals work, and Kennedy reveals an unaired moment from All Stars 3 that she wished had been shown because she got backlash about it. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So they started by watching this week's episode, and during the break, Kennedy said, quote, "Fun fact, I was an alternate for this," meaning All Stars 9. Plasma then said that they then must have decided to, quote, "send her up to Canada instead," because Kennedy was recently announced as being part of the cast for Canada vs. the World Season 2. And Kennedy said, quote, "Yeah, because they knew I was effing mad." Kennedy explained that they told her that she was not going to be on All Stars 9, and then they invited her to do Canada vs. the World, but Kennedy originally said she would only do it if she had a guarantee that she would be on. Kennedy then said, quote, "I'm not going through all of this bleep and then for you to tell me I'm a damn alternate, just in case someone drops out. That's some bull bleep." They then moved on and watched more of the episode, and Plasma asked Kennedy who she is rooting for in this season. At first, Kennedy pretended to fall asleep, as she had joked earlier that this season was boring, and everyone laughed. And in general, this Roscoe's had a very chaotic energy, and both Plasma and Kennedy made a lot of jokes throughout the viewing party. But Kennedy continued and answered the question, and said that she was rooting for Roxy, but then she said she's rooting for everyone. She then joked and said that everyone is doing, quote, "so well," and that the judges are only saying good things. And she used her fingers to indicate quotation marks as if she was being ironic. Caramel then said that the reason is because it's a charity season, but Kennedy replied saying, quote, "Yeah, and that's bull bleep." Kennedy then said that if she had been on this season, they definitely would have had something negative to say. There was then a VIP member question for Kennedy, which was, when she went to film Canada vs. the World, what was one of the biggest culture shocks? Kennedy said that people are making out like they went on tour, and then she said, quote, "We were stuck in a room for 6 weeks. The culture? I mean, snow." And everyone laughed. Cara then asked if the hotels are different to the ones in America, but Kennedy said they're the same. But on Canada vs. the World, they had a suite with a little kitchen as well, and Kennedy would cook food for the other contestants as well as the crew. They then brought up this week's challenge on All Stars 9, which was the Rusical, and Plasma said she had not watched last week's episode, but she had seen something on Twitter about this week's episode, but it was more, quote, "to do with a technical event rather than someone skillfully executing the challenge. So I'm excited to see if we're relying on props and costumes or if we're here to bring it like professionals." Plasma then explained that on her season, they only had 9 hours and 1 rehearsal to learn the whole Rusical. Kennedy agreed and said they really don't get much time for these things. She then said, quote, "Bring me back for when we do the Rusical for Canada." Some people in the audience gasped a bit, and they joked that that was a spoiler that there was a Rusical on Canada vs. the World too. Kennedy then said, quote, "True fans know that it's a Rusical every season. That's not a spoiler, bleep." And everyone laughed. They then watched the part of the episode on All Stars 9 when the queens recorded their vocals for the Rusical. And Kennedy said, quote, "But can I just say something shady as far as production was concerned?" Kennedy then went on to say that on her season of Drag Race, they never showed her recording her stuff, and presumably she was referring to recording vocals for the music challenges. Some people in the audience gasped a bit and started talking between themselves, and Plasma asked if that was really true. And Kennedy said, quote, "Yeah, remember, think about it, they never showed it, especially season 7. Kennedy explained that she never had any problems singing, but they never showed her going through those motions. They then watched the Rusical for All Stars 9, and some people clapped. Cara asked if people enjoyed it, and some people said yes, but it was quite a muted reaction. Batty then said that it sounded like the audience didn't really enjoy it, and Cara said that in her opinion it was good, but we've seen better. Kennedy was quiet and had an expression on her face, and Plasma pointed at her. They then asked Kennedy what she thought. And Kennedy said, quote, "Girl, that was up the devil. I had nothing to do with it. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and if it would have been me, I would have had a real problem doing this challenge." Presumably this is because this Rusical was called Rosemary's Baby Shower, and the theme was quite dark and horror/demonic themed. But people laughed when Kennedy said this, so it may have just been a joke. They then went through each queen's performance in the Rusical, and when they got to Chanel, Plasma said she liked it and that Chanel was channeling New York and Barbra Streisand, and she was really committed to the role. But Kennedy said, quote, "Not good enough for no badge though," and people laughed and were gagged a bit. Kennedy also added that the final edit of the queens dancing together at the end was, quote, "sickening," and she said that we all know that, quote, "folks were messing up." And they kept panning to different queens and not showing other queens, and that, quote, "when they pan it, you know they're messing up." And Kennedy then said, quote, "BB Sahara," but no one really caught that Kennedy had said that, so they moved on. But it was presumably insinuated that Kennedy was saying that on All Stars 3, BB must have messed up in one of the challenges, but they panned the camera to avoid showing her messing up. But this is not confirmed and is just supposition. Plasma then joked about the wig that Nina was wearing for the Rusical and that it was too small for her head. Plasma then said, quote, "Wait, did I ever tell you about the wig that Wigs and Grace styled for me for the Rusical?" And just to explain in case you don't know, Wigs and Grace is a well-known wig styler who makes a lot of wigs for drag queens, including many Drag Race queens such as Kim Chi, Bob the Drag Queen and Eureka. Plasma then explained that there is a picture of this wig deep on her social media, and this is the wig that she was originally given for her role as Mariah on The Sound of Rusic, but it was a bowl cut and it was huge. Plasma joked that she asked production if Wigs and Grace was there, and they said no, and Plasma replied saying, quote, "Good, because this wig is in disgrace. I cannot wear this." Plasma explained that she had to move all over the stage and they had her flying around, so the wig was just too big and she couldn't wear it. So the next day production gave her a, quote, Lisa Rinna wig, and Plasma said, quote, "That'll do." They then watched the runway for this week, and the category was Bring Back My Pearls, and they discussed the Queen's looks overall and who they thought was going to win the episode. When they asked Kennedy, she said, quote, "I was going to say Nina, but that goddamn runway. She makes me so mad. You be so goddamn good, and you get your ass on that runway and look a goddamn mess. I just want to push her off stage." And everyone laughed. Kennedy then joked that Nina has got, quote, "no taste." And Cara agreed and said that on this particular season, when everyone else does have taste, and if you don't, it just stands out like a sore thumb. Kennedy then said, quote, "Not to say, to be fair," and there was a pause, and everyone started laughing because Kennedy was kind of backtracking a bit. Kennedy then continued and said that she has liked some of Nina's runways, but they've all been the same note. Kennedy also joked that people thought her runways were bad on her seasons, so Nina can join her club. They then watched the judges' critiques, and Batty asked what they thought of the judges' critiques, and she said that she wanted to start with Kennedy. Everyone then started laughing because they knew what Kennedy was going to say because she had a look on her face. Kennedy eventually said, quote, "What is the purpose of critiques if everybody is in world peace?" She also said that even Michelle is letting up and she doesn't get it, and not everything is great. And she said that she doesn't give a damn if it's for charity, quote, "Just tell the truth, that was a mess what you had on, baby." She also explained that even though there are no eliminations, they should still keep the dynamic as if there were eliminations, because it still challenges the queens to pull out all of the stops. And if everything is always positive and they always tell the queens that they love them and that they're proud of everything they do, it, quote, "makes it boring because we know you're lying." Kennedy also made the point that Michelle always says she hates leotards on the runway, and there were 3 leotards tonight on the runway and she didn't say anything about it. Plasma agreed and said that as drag queens, they're artists and they're always evolving, and just because you're on All Stars and you have a big fan base, it doesn't mean that the queens are immune to critique. Plasma also said, quote, "Why aren't we dissecting the cream of the crop to see which cream tastes the sweetest?" Kennedy then said, quote, "Well, they tore my ass up. They didn't like bleep that I had on, so I can relate." And it's assumed that she was referring to All Stars 3. And Plasma joked that on All Stars 3, the judges must have looked at Trixie Mattel and loved her, quote, "Barbie cosplay." Kennedy seemingly agreed and laughed and started choking a bit and said, quote, "Yes, oh my god." They were then talking about going back for All Stars, and Batty said it must be hard because on All Stars 9, the queens know that they're not walking out with any money specifically for them, it's for charity. And Plasma started making faces while Batty was talking, and then Plasma said, quote, "Batty, they got paid big bucks to go on this show." Batty agreed, but Plasma then joked and said, quote, "Oh, but you're right, they're not there for the money." But it was clearly meant ironically. Batty then said that they're there to get money for charity, and Plasma said, quote, "Oh, that's right, that's what Plastique is doing." And everyone laughed because Plastique has so far not raised much money for charity because she hasn't won any lip syncs. They then moved on, and Batty asked Plasma if she would ever go back for All Stars. Plasma said that if All Stars called, it would be a, quote, "very hard decision because I spent everything I had financially, physically, mentally, psychologically on my first time there." Plasma also said that she was a, quote, "shell of a person after her season and she was, quote, done." And she wouldn't change any of it, and she had the most amazing time and she's really grateful for it, but there was a long mental health recovery period afterwards. And for her to go back on All Stars, she would need to be in the right headspace and it would take a, quote, "very special circumstance." But she would love to go back if people want to see her back, and everyone cheered for Plasma. They then moved on to the Q&A, and there was a VIP member question which was for Kennedy, and the question was, out of the Canada vs. the World Season 2 cast, who did she get on with the best, and who was the most annoying, and why was it Miss Fiercelicious? Kennedy laughed and then said that everyone on the cast got on really well, and what Kennedy liked the most about Canada vs. the World is that she got to meet queens from other franchises, and none of them were afraid to, quote, "give me my flowers," which really validated Kennedy and her drag. But Kennedy said that in terms of annoying, none of them were annoying, but she joked that Miss Fiercelicious was, quote, "fierce," and Kennedy loves her, but Miss Fiercelicious was just being her, quote, "normal self." An audience member then asked a question about the Rusicals and how much time the queens get to prepare, because the costumes have to be tailored to fit the queens because they're all different sizes, plus they also need time to rehearse. Kennedy said that there is no tailoring, and everyone is given the same amount of time no matter what season it is, and you just have to make it work. Caramel then said that some of the queens have said different things over the years, and some queens get 9 hours, and other queens have said that they had the whole weekend to rehearse. So it varies by season, but the whole cast gets the same amount of time. Plasma added that if there's not a moment that you're rehearsing for the Rusical, then you're in a costume fitting and they're sewing your costumes as you rehearse. Plasma then said that on season 16, they got the Rusical on the Friday, and then on Saturday they rehearsed all day and were in and out of costume fittings, and then on Sunday they had the day off to practice in their hotel rooms. Kennedy then said that they must have really, quote, advanced in that case, because on her season, and it was presumed that she was referring to season 7, she said that no one sewed anything for them. They just gave the queens a list of outfits to bring, and whatever else you had left over, that's what you used. The queens were apparently told that some things would be provided by the show, but the queens were told to bring certain other outfits, and they didn't tell the queens what they would be using those outfits for until they got to set, but they found out that they were being used for certain challenges. And then, according to Kennedy, on All Stars 3, everything that the queens wore was what they brought with them. There was then another question for Kennedy, which was about her experience working on both US and Canadian seasons, and which production did she enjoy working with more. Kennedy said production on Canada vs. the World was the best for her, and they were more validating to the queens, and they were also more, quote, attentive. She then said, quote, they didn't make it seem like we were replaceable. It was also an emotional moment for Kennedy because, quote, you don't realise how you were treated until someone else treats you. And she said that Canada treated her very well, and everyone clapped for Kennedy. Kennedy then said, though, that she doesn't want to knock RuPaul's Drag Race because she's grateful for the opportunities she's had from it, but, quote, personally, we have our feelings. I'm human, we clock a lot of things on and off screen. And even when they're not there, they see a lot of things and they have to adjust to a lot of things as well. And there was a big difference for her between the US seasons and Canada, and Kennedy reiterated that production on Canada was better. And finally, an audience member said that earlier Kennedy had said that they didn't show her vocally recording on her season. And so they asked both Kennedy and Plasma what was one thing that happened on their seasons that they wished got shown but didn't. Kennedy said for her, she wished that they showed more of the final lip sync between her and Trixie on the finale for All Stars 3. The reason is because Kennedy got some backlash about it, with people saying that Kennedy was just doing tricks during that lip sync. But Kennedy said, quote, no B, I lip-synced that whole song. She then added that she wished they had shown the whole song so you could see the whole effect of what Kennedy was doing. And apparently after they were finished filming, they, quote, had to take a break because the lip-sync was so powerful. And Kennedy said even though she won the improv challenge in episode 3, she is still campaigning for them to release the full edit. And that's because they had to do a 10-minute improv, and Kennedy, quote, effed up that whole stage. You think what you saw was funny? It was so funny. And apparently the cameramen and everyone else was laughing, and you could hear them laughing in the headphones, and nobody was holding composure. Plasma said that for her, on the runway for episode 7, which was the flower-themed runway, that was her favourite outfit that she brought with her. And she had a little parasol which she was using like a walking cane, and while she was walking the runway, she put weight on the parasol and the bottom of it snapped off mid-runway while Plasma was walking towards RuPaul and the judges. And Plasma said that she just looked down, thought about it for a second, picked up the dowel at the end of the parasol and just used it to point in the direction that she was walking in and continued walking. They then apparently ran backstage and Plasma told production, quote, I need white duct tape right effing now. And one of the assistants already had some white duct tape with her. And Plasma said that if you zoom in, you can see the duct tape on the parasol. But Plasma said she wished that they had showed that because it was her, quote, funniest non-funny moment. And she felt, quote, untouchable in that episode because that's the episode that she won. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for All Stars 9 episode 9. Do you think that All Stars 9 is boring because there are no negative critiques? And what changes would you make to the All Stars format? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos as well as have your comments featured in my Have Your Say videos, please check out my Patreon and consider supporting me. It goes such a long way to helping support my channel and I really, really appreciate it. And I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreon members who are amazing and support me every month. Thank you so much for being part of my Patreon. I really, really appreciate it and I really do love my Patreon community. You are all legends. If you liked this video, please remember to like and comment on the video to help tell the algorithm that this is a great video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button because it really does make such a big difference to my channel. Thank you for watching and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!